Hello, everybody, and welcome. Thank you for joining us once again, UX team by Nearsoft. Today, we're really excited to team up with another exceptional company, and that is Expedia. So today's webinar, we switched it up on you a little bit. We had made the title "How to Improve Flight Booking with Personalized Search," and as we started working through this, we realized that what we really wanted to do was rethink not just the booking process, but more importantly, the shopping process. Booking entails a lot of things, purchasing credit cards and all that. But we wanted to really hone in on the experience of people who are looking to travel. And not just with personalized search about who you are, what you're interested in, but more of a conversational sense, a humanized sense. And so we've kind of changed today's talk to the rethinking flight shopping with conversational search, and specifically with chatbots. So hopefully didn't throw you off too much there. Don't feel deceived. And before we move on, I would like to introduce myself, as well as our co-host and today's guest. So my name is Kim Lantis. I'm a content coordinator here at Nearsoft, joined by my fellow Nearsoftian, Misael Leon, Miguel was last time, who is a product designer. Hi, Misael.
Hi guys, hi everybody. I miss you, so I'm finally here again.
So much that I screwed up his name. It's been a while.
Thank you, Kim.
And today's guest presenter is Greg Mushin. Greg is joining us from Expedia, and you can see him there on screen with his beautiful daughter, Emily. Greg is the director of product management. So thank you for joining us today, Greg.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
It's our pleasure. Thank you. Before we continue, we just wanted to make it clear that Misael and I are not our own team, and neither is Greg. We work part of a larger team. So there you can see that was our Nearsoft team and the Expedia team, researchers, designers, developers, content writers, a whole slew of people there. So as we move on today, just wanted to let you know what you can expect. So first, we're going to talk about how we search for flights as people, the tendencies there. And then, of course, how chatbots in particular change that experience. And then how we can make that experience even better using chatbots as a type of flight concierge. And then, of course, the best way perhaps to display search results, and then the takeaways. So if you have any questions for us, go ahead and post them there on the live stream, or you could use Twitter, hashtag Nearsoft UX webinar. So without a further ado, Misael, take it away.
Thank you, Kim. That was one of the greatest introductions ever.
Yeah, except for I called you Miguel.
Cool. So what we're going to talk about today is the process of searching for a flight and how can we make that experience better. First, let's remember that looking for a flight is part of a huge funnel in the industry, the travel industry, because there is oftentimes at the beginning when a customer is planning a trip, they are uncertain where exactly they want to go. They might have a sense of the dates, maybe the season of the year, but they don't have really clear about the cost or which flight should they take, because what they're looking for is to maximize the fare and the availability of the flight as well. So what we're going to be talking about today is from that long funnel, the first three stages when customers are trying to be inspired, to get inspired, plan that trip, and actually booking that trip. How can we facilitate that booking of the flight through a chatbot? And we want to show you how. Initially, when we are planning a trip, there's this whole sense of anticipation. We want to go to the beach, or we want to go to the mountains maybe. And we have many ideas going on, and this is the moment of excitement when you are just have an idea. Where do I want to go, right? And then comes the decision part when you have to look for many informations, which is the flight that is of your best convenience and when exactly you should take it, and even creating a route for the flight actually, so it's cheaper for you. Then what happens is you might have done all the reservations and all the booking process, and you get to that moment in which you arrive to the hotel or to the accommodation, and you finally made it. So that moment is crucial in the industry because it's when the enjoyment start to happen. That pina colada finally is gonna be in your hands. But what's going on actually is that initially there's a lot of effort that the customer has to input, flying, looking for the right flight for the best fare. Even as I said, looking for the best route to get there. There are many combinations. So anything that we can do ourselves as product managers, designers, developers, or product people that can facilitate that experience for the customer is precisely reducing that initial effort. And one of the ways that you could do it is with a robot, with a chatbot. That's what we're going to be talking today. And typically the customers searches up for 48 flight combinations before they actually book that flight. This comes from an insight from Expedia. Maybe Greg, you can tell us.
Yeah, this is actually industry data that we got from an industry source, but 48 times, which is pretty incredible. And so what that means is that's kind of across all sites. That wouldn't just be, it's it's not cool. It's very surprising. It was surprising to me when I saw that data. It's not cool from an effort standpoint, but yeah, so that was, I think it came out to 8 searches on 6 different sites. Wow. Was the data that we found. A lot of effort goes into that.
Right.
And I think one of the reasons why is, when you start thinking about going somewhere, what a lot of those searches entail. Well, you might start with just kind of getting an idea of what a price might be on some given dates. You might try a couple different date combos. You might try a couple different locations. And on the back end, kind of what's happening is whenever you perform a search, we're actually looking across billions of flight combinations for any given origin and destination. In fact, we recently ran an unconstrained search on our flight search engine. It was probably about a year ago now. Mm-hmm. We let it run over the weekend to try to see how many flight combinations we could find between Seattle, Atlanta. And for, I think it was a 2-day window, we found 19 quadrillion, which it was quadrillion, 19 quadrillion. And so these were viable combinations, which seems really high, but I will explain why this is. So let's say that you're going from Seattle to Miami. So one way that you could get there is just flying direct. So you could go from Seattle to Miami. Or you could put in a stop. So this stop, I think, was in around St. Louis, but you can imagine doing a stop on the way back from Miami, and it could go in any one of those locations. Or you could do one stop on the way there and one stop on the way back. You could do 2 stops on the way there, 1 stop on the way back, and imagine stopping in any of these airports. So I think you kind of get the idea. But when you combine that with different schedule combinations, with different airline combinations, it turns out that you get to about 19 quadrillion. And that was, I think we stopped it from running at that point. So there's probably more.
Is it the smoke started to come out of the computer?
They started smoking, yeah. So flight search it's a hard computational problem, but even beyond that, it's really tedious for the user. It can be pretty tedious, and doing 48 searches, looking at different dates, trying to figure out what's going to work best for you and your travel partners can take a lot of work.
Mm-hmm. And also, we are researchers. We are trying to get into the business. And what we found during those research is that travelers like to think that they have a trick or a strategy for finding the best airfare. Everybody think that we are so smart by just looking for flight options on Wednesday during the week because that's cheaper. But that's not a trick, actually. In reality, we are all searching and reserving tickets in a similar fashion. Let me show you how we're doing this, and maybe Greg, you can help me on any of those commenting. So one of the hard data that we have is that 60% of the search flights and reservations are done through the regular websites. That's it. We are doing the same old-fashioned in websites, and the rest is the rest of the searches is done through tools. Could be chatbots, widgets, tool, add-ons, and whatnot. The reality is that everybody's looking on websites still, and this is surprising. And maybe Greg can tell us what they found. The surprising fact is that people are still, despite of all the technology available, are writing down the results on paper, because you have to take, you have to have a reference on the best options that you have. And this is surprising, and the guys at Expedia had some trick there.
Yeah, that's right. We actually did some field research and found that when we watched people searching for flights, both in field research and in our usability lab that we have here in Bellevue, Washington, what we saw is people were writing stuff down to kind of keep track of what they looked at. And it makes a lot of sense, because from the standpoint of kind of sharing it with who you're traveling with. And so we found that people were using those notes for kind of comparison purposes, and then also to review options with whoever they were traveling with. And we actually ultimately built a product around it called Scratchpad, but that's for another talk.
Very cool.
Yeah, that's really cool. Maybe we should talk about it in the next time, that actually they transform the way that people write down results on paper through an app. That's really cool. And there's another trick that people often does, Arturo. So what is also a hard fact is that we are all booking a flight like 1 month in anticipation when we're planning a quick getaway. Like,
Right.
I just want to go to a cabin for 1 weekend, so I might start booking and searching for a flight 1 month in ahead. And the opposite happens when you're planning a long vacation. Usually we search and book for flights like from 3 to 6 months in advance. Obviously, people that are frequent travelers, like business people, they don't have that much time, because they already know what they're looking for. So can you hit the next one? And everybody's doing nowadays, this is new, a holistic search, meaning that we want all in the same package. We want the flight, the accommodation,
the
and
hotel.
transportation. And that's easy to see how, because we are also busy. Nowadays, modern times are, everybody's busy, and we just want the best search available, and we don't want to keep struggling with tedious UI screens, like filling up buttons and calendars and text fields and all that. And what we could do here is introduce a chatbot into the experience. Chatbots are changing the flight experience, and we're going to show you how. Next. But first, I think we should come up with an agreement on what is a chatbot. And basically, it's just a program that it's able to have a conversation with you and pass as a human. I mean, we're not trying to deceive anybody, but the thing is that it's conversational enough. That's the key. And it is a simulation as how a human will chat with you to help you get that flight booking and flight search.
So when we started thinking through this and thinking about it as just kind of a different interface, and you can go to the next slide, started thinking about like would there be certain questions that you could ask that might seem a little bit more natural in a chat interface rather than filling out the form. So one thing that we thought might be a little bit more natural would be a question like, when is the best time to go to Mallorca? So this could be something that you might imagine, asking an expert in travel. I work with this guy named my coworker Glenn, and the guy's he's incredible at searching for travel, just because he knows like every trick. So I would imagine like, asking somebody like Glenn this question, and he would come back with this, incredible response telling me exactly why you would want to go to Mallorca during certain times. Another example, if you want to go to the next slide, would be certain responses. So kind of going back to my example of speaking with a travel expert, Glenn. one thing that he might come back with would be, well, you could fly from Seattle to Mallorca from $1,200, but actually, if you fly out of Vancouver, BC, you could save $300. So that is something that we do today. We've got a feature on Expedia that kind of shows you some different options. And so this would show up on the page. However, I think it's pretty interesting to see how it might be a little bit different or might stand out a little bit more in a chat interface. And then you could also talk about, and there's also a 90% chance the price for this route will increase at least $100 in the next 2 days. So a lot of these features we have available, but it's just interesting to see them kind of recast in the context of conversational interface.
Right, because I think if you see alternative option on the left side of your screen, you might not even notice it. But if you're conversing with someone or something, it's a natural tendency to pay attention, to engage.
I completely agree.
Cool. How are you feeling, Kim? Do you want to use a chatbot now for your next vacation?
We'll see.
Well, I'm going to show you.
I'm such a late adapter. I have to admit that. It's kind of embarrassing working for a tech company and being a late adapter. But
yeah, let's see how chatbots are actually improving. So it's more of an easy tool that we can use. So if you want to create a chatbot experience for your own project or your own needs, there are some recommendations that we can give you. The first one is that you should tackle a very, very specific problem, because as we learned, the travel funnel is really long. And Arturo, if you help me with the next slide, I'm going to show you some examples of it. So maybe what you want to create is a chatbot just to contact the sales agent or a person that might help you, an actual human that can help you at an agency. So it's just that the chatbot will contact you with someone to talk to. Maybe you want to use the chatbot to inspire the customer about destinations, or maybe set alarms for fare opportunities, or maybe just in-trip information of the flight, or maybe just the flight status of it. The thing is, what we want to convey here is that you don't try to solve all the problem at once. So a chatbot can be should be very specific, because if not, you're going to complicate the experience even more. And as you will see, it's a hard task to get the chatbot done well. Remember, again, that the travel funnel is really long, so don't try to do all at once. Just pick one of the touch points and focus there. And even you can split it and do a zoom in, and maybe the airport check-in can help you, could be better with a chatbot there. So there are many options that you could do. The other recommendation that we give you is that you have to cover multiple scenarios for that specific problem. Let's see how. I'm going to show you a case study that we did here at Nearsoft. And we created a chatbot for stand-ups. It's a little bit different from the travel industry, but it's the same. It's the same principle that you should use to create a chatbot. So if you want to take a look at this chatbot, it's on beta right now. You can visit softwaredevtools.com/standbot, and you can take a look at it. But this is how we build it, and this is the same for any kind of chatbot. If you want to document the workflow of a chatbot, these are some of the principles that you should cover. I'm going to go real quick, not need to explain each one of them in detail, but basically just what the user flow name is, some preconditions necessary for that particular task, what the bot is actually be saying, the available options that the bot is going to give you, maybe some hints and help, and the customer's possible responses. This is where the multiple scenarios come. Also, you need to document errors, so you can have an exit strategy, and tasks that might require validation. This is more on the system side. So pay attention to the color codes that we have. So you start by the workflow initially, like the name. In this case, it's just how to start a stand-up. And next, Arturo, the precondition is that the stand-up needs to be, or maybe it's not active, or it's the first time that the stand-up is running. So then this is what the chatbot can ask you. So you have to define that and come up with a better wording. And then, Arturo, next. these are the options, the actual buttons or available options on screen that the user can have. So it's either yes or no in this case. And if you click yes, something is going to happen. If you click no, the chatbot is going to tell you something else, okay? And then for each one of those, there's a precondition that needs to be met. So that's the part of the workflow that comes next. And then if you say yes, if this precondition is met, then the chatbot is going to tell you this. And you just keep going and going. As you can see, this is a good way to document all the possible workflows that you can that you can cover. And as you can see, it can get really messy. But once you
Don't
start,
scare him now, Misael.
but once you start diving in, there's more order for everybody in the team. So the thing here is that since the chatbot experience is abstract or intangible in a way, there's no interface associated with it, or at least there are some small parts associated with it, still you need to document that in a way. So this is a cool way that you could do it if you want. And then another recommendation is that you should give personality through conversation. Let's see some examples. Now the chatbot has cool sunglasses there. So in this case, this is a chatbot that exists out there. It's Hipmunk, and you can try it out. And as you can read on screen, the chipmunk actually has some attitude there, and it's really worthy. I mean, it's can get a bit annoyed maybe by too much wording, but you can see that the Hipmunk actually has a personality. That is up to you to define it, and it depends on what the strategy that you want to do for your business. Next one. In this case, for instance, this is some of the options that are presented on the screen. And if you can see, the wording exactly is vacay, which is not, I mean, they don't have to do it that way, but they decided to do it this way because the chipmunk has a personality that can help you. Next. And as you saw on the map that I show you, it's a great idea to have interactive options. This is something that you could do to overcome the complexity of understanding exactly what you want the user to do on the workflow.
And I think it also works twofold. Like you have control, and your user doesn't feel overwhelmed.
Right. So we are going to see some examples on it. So the chipmunk presents the results, also some wording of your options available, but those 4 buttons that you see on screen are the ones that are going to convey the next action. So those are the preconditions that I mentioned earlier. So you can get creative, depends on the library that you're using, but in the end it's a really, really good practice to provide options on screen so a user can manipulate. The other one is, this is complicated to do, but as much as you can, and this is still evolving, but as much as you can understand exactly how the customer is asking you questions, it's going to be better. We're going to see some examples. Natural processing language is the ability to understand language as it is written or spoken. And this is, again, something complicated to do, and that's where the buttons comes in, because it can help you to drive that conversation without having to be all conversational. So you can see on the screen some options on, I'm highlighted in purple, the ways that I make the query to the chatbot. In some case, I just say, inspire me. And in this case, this bot did not understand what I was saying. And when I asked him do you tell any jokes? It did not understand either. And when I asked him, what else can you do? That one did understand. He told me the commands that I can use on the help. And the same goes for, people will ask for search for flight combinations in different ways, and as smart as you can be, so the robot can understand what the user is trying to say. That's what Greg was mentioning before, that some options are easier to tell to someone, either if it's a chatbot, than just to be clicking buttons and calendars on a tedious interface. So that's why we are aiming here, that it's easier to talk to a person, in this case a chatbot, and to ask for these recommendations on flight search. This is another good example. this is more complicated because I mentioned that it should be on winter, and the chipmunk actually understood what I was saying. Next. Some more examples. Um, in this case, I asked the robot if he can tell any jokes, and they said confirming credit card purchase for something. Just kidding. I did not understand what you were asking. And that's, I think, a clever exit strategy to drive the conversation to something else, because it's responding to what it did not understood. It's telling a joke, and it's instructing you how to ask for something specific to the chatbot.
But inadvertently, I think it told a joke.
I
Right?
told a joke.
It's
Yeah.
hilarious. I actually saw that slide and it made me laugh out loud, literally.
Because
Yeah, I was just laughing out loud
it
too.
got really scary when she was saying what he was saying, that I'm gonna charge you now on the credit card. I go, whoa, which credit card? I didn't input any credit card information. All right, the next one, I don't have an example, but this is something that we should do, and it's really hard, and it's work towards being predictive. So when the customer is asking you something that you are not covered on the workflow that you define, you should be smart enough to provide options so the conversation keeps flowing in the way that you want the chatbot to do it.
Yeah,
So
and I think that this could be a really important
any example?
point, specifically when you're talking about flights too,
Mhm.
because if you go back to, or not go back in the slides, but if you think back to our example
Mhm.
where we were showing all the different flight combinations, that's one of the reasons why flight search can take a long time. But I think that there are some opportunities there when we think about like predictive. Yeah, so going through all these different combinations. That's kind of what we're doing on the back end. So we won't search 19 quadrillion, but we're going to search as many flights as we possibly can. And then also make sure that we have accurate availability for each of those flights. So this is why certain flight searches can take a little while. And we do a lot of tricks to try to speed that up. But from a chat interface, I think going back to the point about being predictive, would you have an opportunity if a user asks you a question to kind of do more searches preemptively and just have those results ready to go?
Right.
So in the case, one example can be that maybe you are asking for a flight to Bogota in Colombia, and maybe the chatbot can recommend you should visit also Barranquilla, another city there. So that's being predictive, actually, because you are driving the conversation to what you can do as a chatbot. So that's being smart. So the conversation
Which is
keeps
conversational.
going.
That's what happens in a conversation with a person,
Exactly.
right? Like, oh, well, I've been there, but I've been here, and it's actually better.
Right. And okay, we can move on. So you might be wondering, how do results differ on websites versus chatbots? Because have been talking about search and how people actually perform those queries to the chatbot. But what happens when you want to present those results? So there's a bit of difference when it comes to websites and chatbots. On websites, you can get creative as much as you want because there's lots of options that you can present. And this depends on the product team, actually, because there's no right or wrong answer. It all depends on your A/B testing, your continuous usability testing, and your business strategy as well. So what's the behavior that you are trying to force, or not force, but encourage exactly on the user. So this is how Expedia does it. Ray, can you tell us?
Sure. Yeah, I would say at one point we do extensive A/B testing. In fact, I would say that everything on this page, we don't put anything on the page without A/B testing it. But yeah, so we're big fans of that approach.
Cool. And this is on website. I'm going to show you more examples so you can see what I'm talking about, and then we're going to show you some examples on the chatbot results. This is how Skyscanner does it. As you can see, it's pretty similar, but once you start seeing the details, you start noticing the differences and many opportunities to inform the user about perks and really specific stuff.
Yeah, stops, who airlines are operated by. Yeah, lots of different information.
Mm-hmm. This is how Aeromexico does it as well. They are being smart on the different fares that you have, which is nice, I think. The next one, Priceline again is dividing by tabs and the different fares that you can have across different days. Next one. This is American Airlines. And another one, Arturo. Kayak as well is you can start seeing the differences and the similarities on the how flights are presented on the search. But in the end, when you are tackling the challenge of presenting results on a chatbot interface, it's different because it's a conversation and you should not distract the user from that. But results are really important, and what we recommend you to do is just to present as minimum information as you can. And this is something that this is a checklist that you can do, just showing the airports, departure and arrival date and time, the length of the flight, numbers of stop, price, category, if you are categorizing your flight's results in different ways, and action items, again, the interaction that you have with the bot. Let's see some examples of what are we talking about here. So this is a way that Kayak does it right now on the chatbot, and you can see that it's really minimum, and oftentimes you need to scroll through different results. So you're not going to see a thorough list or a comprehensive list of all the flights, but the interaction is more playful, in which you need to scroll through like a carousel through different options. Here's how the arrival and departure date and time. We can go quicker on this. So the length of the flight, the number of stops, which is just the minimum information, and then the categories of it, and the results in the action items that you can present. And then this is repeated across the board. I mean, it seems like there is a standard now for chatbots, and let's not try to invent the wheel again. It's the very minimum information that you can present, and you're gonna be good with it. Right. This is Icelandair. It's a good chatbot that is actually helping you to book the flight, and you can do it through the chatbot. This is one of the first chatbot that is allowing you to book the flight with the chatbot itself, which is really cool. You should check it out in case you are flying to Iceland. Okay, next one. And I think we're ready for some takeaways. Kim?
Cool. Unless you have any last final words of wisdom there, Greg.
I do not at this time. At this time.
Right, perfect. So, back to rethinking flight shopping with conversational search, specifically chatbots. So, robots aren't that scary after all. But understanding that bots are a booming trend. But if you are willing to do that and wanting to step into it, focus first. That's a big funnel, so make sure you do one thing well before you move on to another. And of course, make a friendly personality. Decide who you are, what your company's about, and let your bot reflect that. Make sure that the language is natural, of course. Think about how people speak and respond. Up next, cover all possible scenarios. Use inline prompts and buttons and call to actions. I was going to ask, this is actually my question, Misael. I think there needs to be contingencies here as well, like typos and those types of things.
Yes.
But we can talk about that after we go through the touch points, I guess. But that's my question.
Okay.
And then display bare minimum results. Don't overwhelm your users. More than likely, they're using their cell phones, so it's a small screen anyway, right? Mm-hmm. And provide clear action items for each result. And lastly, have a graceful exit strategy. Don't be rude. You wouldn't walk off without saying goodbye, have a nice day, would you? So create a general statement and or propose a next step for your user. Did you want to introduce this?
No, I just want to add something here on the exit strategy, because I think it's really important. This is when you have not an answer for what the customer is asking you, and you need to move graceful from it. You are in a big problem there, but you have to come up with a clever response so you can move away from what the customer is asking you and you don't know the answer, but suggest another way that the conversation can go. And I think my conclusion is that chatbots are booming because it's just the beginning of this interaction with robots, and they are getting smarter and smarter. And if you are jumping into this chatbot adventure, I think you are going to be in the right time to be innovative, because there's nothing written on stone. And it's really exciting path, because it's something that is new. If you are a designer, for instance, it's going to be great because you're going to be designing something without actual UI, which is pretty cool. Okay, next one. Next slide is just a shameless promotion on the bot that I've been designing. And this is for stand-ups, and you can get it here. You can join our beta, and you can give us some feedback as for the personality that we're creating for the bot before it takes over the world.
I'm really looking forward to trying this. I haven't tried it yet.
Cool.
Thank you. And of course, Greg.
And we do a bot for Facebook Messenger as well. So another plug.
Very cool. Thank you. So before we move on to the Q&A, I just want to say thank you, Misael, Greg, for joining us. There's the contact information, folks, on the screen if you're interested in reaching out. Email as well as Twitter handles and websites. So we do have one question for you guys. This is coming from a viewer named Adrian. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong. But how does Expedia feel about the chatbots in general? Do you guys see it as an advancement or not quite yet?
So sorry, I think I might have been having some network issues there. So you're kind of going in and out.
that's
Could
okay.
you repeat the question?
Yes, of course. How does Expedia feel about the chatbots in general? Do you guys see it as an advancement or not quite yet?
Oh, an advancement. Well, definitely think it's something that we're exploring. So I think that you saw the Facebook Messenger. It's something that we're starting to look into, and learning more about every day. So I think it's an interesting space.
That's really fun. And Nearsoft's perspective, Misael?
I believe, as I said, that this is a new territory for us as well, and we're learning a lot by exposing it to early adopters that are not afraid of robots. Eventually, no one will be afraid of robots, but we're getting there. I mean, it's really weird to interact with a robot. So for the customer, it's actually new, and for us, trying to develop an experience is actually new as well. So everything is new. I mean, we're the ones producing it, and people using it as well. And what I can tell you is that you can be creative, and you're going to learn a lot. But what you need to do is just to expose it as soon as you have the first version ready, and to let it out and in the wild. What I can tell you is that interacting with a robot is actually a really weird experience. You have to be prepared for people insulting the robot, and you have to be prepared for people expressing love for the robot. So you have to have a response for that as well. And one thing you have to be sure is that people are going to try to break it. They're going to try to make as many questions as they can, so they can find the vulnerabilities of it. And I think this is not related to technology itself, but more on the way that is more in the way that humans are interacting with this new intelligence in a way, which is artificial. But there you go. I believe there's lots of cool ways to overcome the challenges.
I've got a question for you. When you were saying insult the robot, do you think that comes from user frustration?
Well, I think I misheard the question. Can you repeat it, Greg?
Oh, do you think that people insult the robot or have a tendency to insult the robot due to frustration? So something in the bot not working, or do you think it's something else?
I believe that's one of the biggest reasons. Yes, because it's not working. It's not telling you what you ask. And the other one is just a natural tendency just to see how smart the robot is, so you are smarter than it.
So going back to those contingencies, swear words should be in that list. You stupid piece of...
Yes, they're going to get that.
There is another question from a viewer today. This is from Aaron. When to use a chatbot and when to go for the old-fashioned way, as in a website, or can we combine it?
Okay, I think I can take it first. So this is a tough one. What I would say is that it depends on the problems that you are identifying on the different portions of the funnel. So maybe getting someone on the phone, it's a problem for you, and maybe you can analyze the idea of having a chatbot to redirect those calls or find someone that is available at the moment. So I will say that when to use them, it depends. If you have a problem that you can automate by having not a human attending solving that particular problem, I think that's when you have to use a chatbot.
But where the human experience would be appreciated.
Right. And I think it all boils down to the problem that you are trying to solve. Don't rush it to use a chatbot just because, but think of it if the solution to that problem can be automated and you don't have the human resources to actually do it.
Yeah,
That will be my
I,
take on it.
I was going to say the same thing. If you can identify, I think, a problem that would make a user problem that you currently have right now a lot easier, and then that solution is more natural in a chatbot interface, I think that would probably be when I would start looking at using it. And then also, I think too, will it be like a natural way for users to find it? Is another consideration.
Right, that makes a lot of sense. We do have one final question. This is from Sorn. The chatbot will become essential for travel or not compared to other industries such as the banking industry or fashion industry?
I think it's a really good question, and I feel like chatbots and travel are still really early. So I guess my question is, or my answer to that would be, I don't know if we're quite sure yet. We see the general trend in chatbots, but it'll be really interesting to see where they go. And I think that one thing that I was thinking of after watching the latest WWDC from Apple is, would chatbots, or not necessarily text interfaces but voice interfaces, how does that change with augmented reality? And I think that there's some pretty interesting things to think about there. So if you have, for example, a screen in front of you, or no screen, no physical screen, but an augmented reality screen in glasses or something else, and you have a voice interface to that device, will you start doing more kind of chatbot like things in those interfaces? So I don't know the answer to that, but it's something that I've been thinking about.
I believe we're not there yet, but it's definitely will happen, just because the nature of the travel funnel, in which you require lots of information and as you go, so you might not have a person that assists you on it. So I believe it will happen. We're not there yet. And one consideration that we have to take here is that Facebook is pushing it, and everybody's on Facebook. So I think that's going to be really important, just to see how Facebook manages it. Not because Facebook is the most important company on it, but because of most of the people are there. So
Right.
let's see how that evolves.
I think it's interesting because the question is essential and what might not become essential. And I'm not the expert here, but I certainly see it as an opportunity area, particularly as someone I live in a foreign country. I've traveled to several foreign countries, and I think it's really cool to have that idea of if you're a traveler of having that connection to home, especially if you're in a place where it's not your language, not your culture, and like the ability to ask someone who is you can trust and who's not going to yell back at you or something. It's a really cool opportunity area, and I think travel allows for a lot of opportunities to take advantage of someone you can easily communicate to,
Yeah.
something you can easily communicate to.
Just as a final note, I would just like to say that love your chatbot. Express love to the chatbot.
Yes, love your chat. Really great. Well, we're up that's the end of our webinar today. We hope you enjoyed it, folks. I hope you learned a lot, and we've piqued your interest in that conversational search. Greg, Misael, once again, thank you for your time today.
Yeah,
And
thank you so much.
no, it's our pleasure.
Thank you, everybody. In the future, we might be chatbots doing the webinars. So, in the meantime, see you next time.
Yes, take
See you
care.
next
Until
time. Take
next
care.
time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.